Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Mick Alphanim. Let's jump right into it today. So many big things happening today. So I hope you saw, Ripple had a meeting today. Brad Garlinghouse himself had a meeting today with the head of the CFTC, Caroline D. Pham. This is strategic outright. Just like Stellar is having Caroline D. Pham, the head of the CFTC, at Meridian. Everything's coming together. So I know we have some big information that's probably going to be released today. We're waiting to hear about that. Also, if you didn't see that video from Jeremy Hogan the other day, that was powerful. The wording in which the SEC is using when they're talking about Ripple versus XRP and sort of the negation of mentioning XRP as a security, and then the SEC sort of having a focus on just going after Ripple, that is very good because we can defeat them on those grounds very easily, in my humble opinion. Of course, anything can happen, but the fact that the SEC has taken a step back, has backed down, that's huge. That's a victory in itself. Also, I'll say this. So if you haven't watched that video, head over to Legal Briefs channel and definitely give that a watch. It was a potent one. But of course, like I said, we have information coming out tonight. So, I'm sure it's going to be everywhere. And that could be because of the request for summary judgment. So I'm sure that's going to be explosive as well. But also, pay close attention to how the SEC is sort of shifting focus away from Ripple. And they went berserk the last 2 days. They filed so many lawsuits against blockchain companies, even some influencers. The SEC has gone insane, which tells me they're shifting focus, which means that they're prepared just in case they lose this case. That speaks volumes. But we will wait and adjust accordingly and see what happens, of course. But these are major happenings going on right now. This is a very exciting time. I believe we're going to win. Let's move on to this article here. A lot of great news. So here's a little article on U.Today about the meeting with the CFTC. And it goes as such. Ripple CEO's meeting with the CFTC commissioner sparks flurry of speculation. Of course, this was strategic and this was a message to the SEC. Not only that, it's not just a message from Ripple, but the SEC has been really, well, how do I say it? Like they speak like a older brother to the CFTC, as though they have no respect for the CFTC, and they don't like that. The CFTC should be respected, just like the SEC. So it's a message from the CFTC to say we're here. We have a job to do, and we want to do that job, and we're fighting back. This is a show of power. This is a show or showing that we are making moves on the chessboard. Let's read this little tidbit here. It says, Pham, Caroline D. Pham, says that visiting Ripple Labs was part of her learning tour. They're gathering information, in my humble opinion, they're gathering information as to build a case, or rather not a case, but an argument as to why these particular cryptocurrencies, in my opinion, the bank coins, as you see, meeting with Ripple, then later on they're having meetings with Stellar, why they are currencies, so that they can be brought under the fold of the CFTC. That's what this is all about. That's what they're collecting data. Let's continue on here. It says Garlinghouse claims that it was an absolute pleasure. The meeting went extremely well. Look at how they're standing in the picture. Everything about it says good energy. Was an absolute pleasure to welcome her to his company's offices. The CFTC commissioner attracted the adoration of the XRP community, of course. And will also attract the adoration of the XLM community later when we have that meeting at Meridian. Many of its members also did not miss an opportunity to take a dig at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Of course, the CFTC is completely professional, completely logical. Caroline D. Pham seems to have a very good understanding of the distributed ledger technologies and the need for new regulatory structure around distributed ledger technologies. So who wouldn't respect that? And you can read this individual statements online, and then Caroline D. Pham will stand on those statements. Caroline D. Pham doesn't flip-flop like Gary Gensler. So that's going to cultivate a lot of merit and respect from the people out there in the world that have a vested interest or belief in DLTs. Let's continue on here. So to take a dig at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, which is known for having a more aggressive approach to regulating crypto compared to its sister agency. I wouldn't say aggressive approach. It's a negative and detrimental approach. There's a difference, because you can be aggressive and it can still be positive. However, the SEC has been overtly negative and detrimental. They've hurt so many people. It's unbelievable. They've gone after every compliant crypto and compliant exchanges, which has caused a devastating effect on individuals who want to participate in the crypto ecosystems. That's how I would phrase that. So I just beg to differ on that point, but it's no major deal. There are also those who believe that the timing of the meeting might not be a coincidence. It is not. There is no coincidence. Chance is but cause and effect unrecognized. Let me say that again. That's law. Chance is but cause and effect unrecognized. For every effect, there is a cause. And for every cause, there is an effect. The wise recognize this and apply law against law. One cannot break the laws. I'm not talking about man-made laws. One cannot break the laws, but using law against law, you can bend the laws. You understand that? Oh, I gave you some gems right there. Let's continue on here. SEC Chair Gary Gensler has repeatedly stressed that the vast majority of existing cryptocurrencies are securities. We already know what these individuals said. Okay, so now let's move on to another article here. Make sure you check out u.today. They're doing a great job over there. Support these individuals who are doing a great job bringing us the news. We have an article here. This is on zcrypto.com. It says Ripple and SEC demand swift verdict on $1.3 billion securities lawsuit. Why it's super bullish for XRP. Like I said, in that video that Jeremy Hogan released, that gentleman explained clearly of how the SEC had taken back steps. Not only that, there's an argument that Ripple is making that is absolutely brilliant. They dug for some information that is absolutely devastating to the SEC case. But head over to that video and check that out. But yes, I would assume that because of that information that got out, that's why a lot of people are very bullish that there could be a possible victory. It brings us closer to the certainty of a victory. Let me phrase it that way. So it goes as such. It's been a good day for XRP. The 7th largest crypto by market capitalization has risen by over 3% today, following news that both Ripple and the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission have filed summary judgment motions. The two parties in the ongoing XRP lawsuit believe the presiding judge has adequate information to deliver a verdict without letting the case proceed to trial. Ripple SEC seeks speedy resolution of suit. The Securities and Exchange Commission and Ripple, the blockchain company behind XRP, are both looking to end their ongoing court battle without protracted trial. The two parties filed motions of summary judgment in the Southern District of New York, urging Judge Annalisa Torres, who has been very favorable towards us, by the way. Hopefully that shows itself in what's to come. Judge Annalisa Torres to announce a decision based on the legal filings that have already been presented rather than on testimony given at trial. In December 2020, the SEC sued Ripple. Okay, we know all of this information here. Let's see if there's anything else. The recently filed motions for summary judgment suggest the parties are requesting the judge to rule on whether either the SEC or Ripple has presented enough evidence to prove whether or not there was a breach of federal securities regulations. Throughout its defense, Ripple has argued that its cross-border remittance token XRP is not a security, and that was key in what was released, the information that was released by the attorney Jeremy Hogan, that the SEC in some of its statements seemed to be backing off of saying that XRP is a security. But their argument shifted over to how Ripple offered them as a security, which in my humble opinion makes no sense. It makes no sense in my opinion. You would have to sell XRP, or you could make the argument of selling XRP, not for anyone you sold it to make a return on investment, but as a mechanism. XRP is a mechanism. Anybody can build and use XRP. It's decentralized sufficiently, but it's a mechanism that is necessary in order to use the XRPL. So if you build on it, you would have to utilize XRP to some capacity. And if you're a for-profit company, you're going to sell XRP for profit, in my humble opinion. That's how I would look at it, but not as an investment contract. There is no legal, like you're not legally bound to bring a return on investment to anybody. So there's no contract. I mean, I think that's just logical. We'll see how it works out. But like I said, once again, Jeremy Hogan's video was unbelievable. Now let's continue on here. Throughout its defense, Ripple has argued that its cross-border remittance token XRP is not a security. It's not, in my humble opinion. As one of its main arguments backing its defense, Ripple has contended that there was no contract between the firm and XRP investors. There isn't. There isn't. Cryptocurrencies, bring about a return on investment the same way that if you're trading currencies brings about a return on investment. Trading dollars and euros and such, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's not a contract. Let's continue on here. Ripple has the edge so far. Several legal experts commented on the summary judgment motions on Twitter. In September 18th tweet, attorney Jeremy Hogan, okay, so they referenced this individual, quote, the SEC has got a couple of big problems. Its expert agrees that most of the changes in XRP price are due to market forces. Exactly. This is what I'm saying. This is what a lot of individuals have been saying for years. Similarly, lawyer Fred Rispoli, who is known for closely following the case, said the agency relies heavily on marketing efforts. And quote, while this is the weakest point for Ripple, I just don't think it is close to being weak enough to give the SEC the win. Okay, so even that aspect is positive. If the ruling goes against the SEC, and then he says marketing, like what marketing? I mean, they're having closed door meetings most of the time with different companies, but I wouldn't call that marketing. They released some documents just because I believe they released documents because of decentralization. So you want to let the people know what's going on with the XRPL. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. OK, this is why you have lawyers, legit lawyers going over this information and putting out a lot of good things. I think we're going to win 100%. We're doing very well. We've always done very well. So it says, if the ruling goes against the SEC, the agency and chair Gary Gensler will be seriously enfeebled. No, they won't. They're going to go after everybody. That's the thing. I think the SEC is realizing, even if they lose this case, they can still go after most of the rest of crypto. And what happens in this case won't have an effect on what happens to the rest of crypto. The only ones that will be affected by Ripple's victory in this case will be the bank coins, which is just a handful of coins, a handful of companies. The rest of crypto will still be in trouble, as you saw from the SEC going absolutely bonkers and how many lawsuits they filed the last few days. It's unbelievable. I'm quite sure you're going to see that in the news. If the ruling, okay, so let's continue right here. It says, and the price of XRP, which has been under immense suppression, since the lawsuit was lodged, would likely skyrocket. I want you to pay attention to that. Let me read that again. Good times are ahead. If everything goes according to plan, if we have positive outcomes, we will see how it goes. It says, one more time, if the ruling goes against the SEC, the agency and chair Gary Gensler will be seriously enfeebled, and the price of XRP, which has been under immense pressure since the lawsuit was lodged, would likely skyrocket. So there's people sitting on a ton of XRP. My goodness. Oh, they're going to get a taste of the flood. I won't say be the full flood. They're going to get a taste of the flood. Oh, yeah. I said they know we will get a taste of the flood. But I'm waiting on the tsunami. I'm waiting on tsunami. Personally, because I know some people, XRP's price skyrockets. Some people are going to need to liquidate certain things. The world has been in a harsh circumstance, struggling. People need to pay bills. People need to live, so I completely understand that. 100% do what you have to do. Do what you have to do. Survive. Do well for yourself. Do well for your family. You understand? That's how I feel. It's not advice, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Okay. That's how I personally feel. Do what you have to do. Here's another article from U.Today. They've been doing a great job. Make sure to support them. Go over to their website, check them out. XRP triples funds inflows in 1 week. Triples in 1 week. Remain strong despite bear market. A lot of the bank coins have remained stable, strong. Quant has been thriving. So it says, despite poor funds flows into crypto-oriented products, XRP has seen threefold increase in inflows, CoinShares reported. While the week before last saw a fund inflow of $100,000 into XRP-focused crypto products, this time it was already $300,000. XRP remains one of the few cryptocurrency products that has continued to attract funds for the past 6 weeks, despite negative market dynamics on the ongoing SEC versus Ripple litigation. With regulators' plans to have XRP recognize, what they want to do, funds inflows into XRP-oriented products are also up $500,000 month over month. Year over year, the data is even better, with a surplus of 8.5 million. And that's in a bear market. That's in a bloody market. Like, imagine when everything's doing a little bit better and that switch gets flipped. It's going to be a fun time, in my humble opinion. Okay, so now let's move on to here. You know what? I was going to do a little Vechain news now, but I want to jump to this Bank of International Settlements document, if you'll bear with me. Then we'll get to a little bit of Vechain news, and then we'll end off with a little bit of Hedera. But I think this is so important. People are not understanding what's happening in the world and how it's going to affect everybody. Let me read this little tidbit, and I'll just play off of this. So this Bank of International Settlements document is titled Bank Funding, Evolution, Stability, and the Role of Foreign Offices. All right, let's scroll down here to key takeaways. First bullet point. Bank funding sources have been shifting from cross-border to local funding. Well, when you're talking globally, the reason why that's going to be happening is a lot of countries, a lot of nations, they don't like the weaponization of SWIFT. That is another reason why they're going to stop using SWIFT, why everyone's looking for an alternative to that. SWIFT is used as a control mechanism, and nobody wants that anymore. So no matter how much SWIFT wants to brag about, we have 11,000 financial institutions in our network. We've been long established. We're trusted. They're not really trusted, and nobody wants to use them. Nobody wants to have a manacles on their wrist or a leash on their neck. This is why so many countries are trying to get away from both, entities like SWIFT, and also they're rebelling. A lot of countries are rebelling against entities like the IMF, because everything that they offer, these so-called benefits, are utilized, are leveraged against those countries later on as control mechanisms. So, and I had an article I was reading earlier about the IMF. The IMF has been going to a lot of different countries. I think they just did something with Mozambique, right? Then also they just had a meeting in Argentina. And I think they made some agreements with Argentina. Of course, what the IMF is probably going to do is issue some loans and stuff like that. They're talking about helping with the stability in Argentina, things of that nature, which is unbelievable to me, because if you look at the regions that the IMF has been in, they failed over the last decade or a few decades. They failed. The regions aren't doing as well as they could. And their government officials many times have come out in Latin America and other regions of the world as well, saying how these systems have not been working and they'd like to try something new, but they can't because they owe the IMF. Of course, like I said, there's a couple of nations rebelling against that. You know, one good example was El Salvador. When IMF said, hey, don't use Bitcoin, they said, no, we're going to try Bitcoin. We're going to try something new. But circling back around, a lot of places around the world want to get out of those control mechanisms. So now, with that kept in mind, of course, they're going to go from receiving most of their funding cross-border, because now they have to look for a new cross-border mechanism, probably going to be something XLM based or XRP based or Algorand DLT based, in my humble opinion. But they have to look for another realm of funding rather than cross-border until they solve that problem. So it's going to have to obviously be local, right? So let's go back here. Bank funding sources have been shifting from cross-border to local funding. That's not going to be permanent. Now, I'll tell you why. In my humble opinion, it's not going to be permanent. Number one, the new financial system is going to come online. So then they'll be able to receive liquidity and funding cross-border with ease and on their own terms. That's number one. Number two, the global debt and the financial crisis that is rearing its ugly head right now, and a global, possible, highly likely global depression that is to come. And mostly it's going to come because of the overprinting of money. And now they're going to have to dramatically raise interest rates around the world. And they're going to crush all the economies, if they're going to do it how they've been saying, in unison. They're going to crush all the economies at the same time. That would necessarily send the world into a rapid deflation, leading into a global depression. So if we do enter a global depression, that's going to crush all the local economies. Therefore, the funding and liquidity there's going to be a major problem with liquidity and receiving funding locally. Then where do you look for funding after that, or liquidity after that? You would have to look at externalized sources that are not as affected by a global depression or a global deceleration, which would be major companies. Major companies, of course, have no problem reaching out to you. But a lot of those major companies that are going to offer you funding, even though some of that funding might be quite predatory, will be in the West. So then it's going to go right back to cross-border seeking out cross-border funding, cross-border based funding, in my humble opinion, which, like I said, has huge implications in the future for the new financial system, because the new financial system will be the only cross-border system that is accepted by nations that are outright against SWIFT. You're going to see more and more nations be outright against SWIFT, especially as the BRICS nations gather power. More and more people are going to have a little bit more courage to go against the bully and speak up against the bullies in the West and say, hey, we don't want to use SWIFT. It's just outright bad. You're controlling us. They're going to have a little bit more gumption of fire in their belly to say things like that, or to take that particular stance. And so the only acceptable way to move money cross-border will be distributed ledger technologies, in my humble opinion. The new financial system. And that is going to cause the new financial system to have a flood more of money, trillions and trillions of dollars flowing into it, theoretically speaking, everything in degrees, logically, okay, and over time. That's how I see that going. And I got all of that out of this one bullet point. I wanted to go over much more, but I don't want to keep everybody here for too long, all right? But I think that's really good information to understand as you're dealing with these banking entities, and you need to understand what may occur to them if there's going to be a liquidity crisis, if they're not going to be able to have access to funding, if they're going to go with localized funding for some time, but then we enter a depression and you have your money in those banks. You have to stay abreast and privy of what's going on with those banks that are holding your money. Okay, we have to protect our value at all costs. This is why I think it's important, especially as more and more people, I keep saying this, you can look up the articles for yourself, especially as more and more people are moving to Central America, moving to South America, moving to Africa, moving to Europe, moving to Southeast Asia. And there's a ton of people leaving the West, West being like United States and, Europe, the European Union, things of that nature, right? So there's a ton of people leaving those places. So as that continues, you really need to understand what's going to be going on with your money if you're going to be using banking, things of that nature, and you're not going to custody your own value. So just be careful is what I'm saying. All right, so now let's move on here to a little Vechain news. All right, give me a little bit more of a calmer video today. Every day is different. I like to switch up the energies from time to time, okay? And my mind has so many thoughts in it today. It's just not a play around day. right? Especially with what's happening with Ripple in the SEC case and waiting for that information to get released at some point in the next day or so. Okay, so let's get on to a little bit of Vechain news. Vechain just did a partnership with Uco Network to develop an infrastructure for the global used cooking oil industry. That's biofuel. Okay, this is major. Vechain continues to do major deals, and then they have this little article attached here. Let's read this little tidbit because it's going to put people, it's going to put into perspective why so many people believe that Vechain is going to explode when everything is up and running. The new financial system is up and running. There's mass adoption of distributed ledger technologies, but just listen to this little tidbit here. It says there are currently more than 500 firms and enterprises that use the Vechain based solutions, and their numbers continue to grow. So what is Vechain? Let's go a little bit deeper. Now, keep in mind, Vechain is not even on some major platforms. I think Vechain's not even on Coinbase yet. And it's only growing. And not only that, when they say 500 firms, keep in mind, Vechain is not deep, from my understanding, is not even deep in the United States yet. Vechain is not even deep. I do know they have some business going on in Europe, but I don't think they're that deep in Europe either. They're going to grow rapidly. And because they have so many firms that have been testing it and building on Vechain, I don't know that everything is up and running, but testing it and building on Vechain. And keep in mind, you have to take into account what degree are they using Vechain to, because it's sort of like you're bringing Vechain in as you're phasing the legacy system out. So you still have this partial use of legacy system offerings until they're sure Vechain it serves the function that they need, and then they fully substitute the legacy system offerings with Vechain. So that's usually how it works in businesses. You usually just don't completely swap out an entire system until you get your workers, your employees used to using it. You prove to yourself that this actually functions well, it works, nothing's going wrong, and then you sort of phase the other thing out. So there's time for that as well. There's time for that to happen as well. But even so, they have enough use cases to when there's mass adoption to say, listen, these companies are using this. We have biofuel that we're doing traceability for, measurements for, tracking for, however you want to put that. We have shoe companies. We have makeup companies utilizing Vechain for tracking codes, traceability. We have food companies. They have all of this they can give examples for. So when it comes to them finally sitting down with more major companies, it will be very, very easy to float the idea of Vechain. Keep in mind, because of the lack of regulatory clarity in the West, that has also held back offerings like Vechain. But once you have regulatory clarity, I think Vechain will run wild. There are many companies that have been laying low and staying away from the West, so they don't have a problem with the SEC and regulatory bodies that will be aggressive with them. So, once more, for utility-based tokens, I think that the Ripple case will have huge implications in my humble opinion. The rest of crypto is going to be in trouble, but the utility-based coins will have a precedent set for them. And I think that if there's a positive outcome to the Ripple case, and I believe that there will be, that will be very good for the rest of utility coins. So now let's end off with a little bit of Hedera news. Hedera has been making some major moves. HBAR has been making some major moves. And so they have this partnership with ServiceNow. And I want to read you this little use case description here. It says, in this use case, you will see how ServiceNow helps organizations create and distribute their token. We will also see how ServiceNow can provide both enterprise wallets to allow the organization to manage the token lifecycle and integrate with customers' wallets to manage and present their tokens. In the use case, we will see the customer journey of a user, Alice, who has bought a pair of running shoes from Fast Shoes. After her purchase, Alice can redeem an NFT from the Fast Shoes customer service portal, a digital twin of her product. This is going to be major, and I'm going to tell you why. This is why I wanted to cover this. There's going to be a lot of jobs that have virtual offices permanently. Virtual offices permanently. They're going to require remote workers And they will have a permanent aspect of their business that will have remote workers, okay? Or virtual, not remote, but like virtual workers. Those virtual workers, probably a few times a month, will be required to come in and check into the physical office. But when they're not in the physical office, in that metaverse office, the virtual office, they will be required to have a uniform. You can buy your physical uniform for when you have to come into the physical office. But at the time when you buy that physical uniform, you will use something like ServiceNow to be provided a digital uniform and certify that you did pay for it and it is authentic. Then you will be able to enter your virtual office space or cubicle, whatever it is, wearing that uniform, wearing those authorized shoes. This will be major. A lot of value will flow across Hedera via ServiceNow because of things like this. And I think a lot of the bank coins see where NFTs are heading, and they are going to get on that money as well. This is why they're doing payroll. This is why a lot of the bank coins, you might wonder, why are the bank coins getting into the metaverse? Because banks, virtual banks will be in the metaverse. That's number one. Digital banks will be in the metaverse. Office spaces, virtual office spaces will be in the metaverse. A lot of value from payroll, uniform sales. So much value because of things like that will flow through the bank coins based on these use cases from NFTs. So that's why I wanted to cover this. This is major. This is huge. I think it's a huge implication of what is to come. The digital twin helps Alice validate the authenticity and the provenance of the product by knowing the item's manufacturer and its scores in terms of sustainability and workers' conditions. So there you have it. So the future is going to be interesting and quite strange, but in the aspect of the bank coins exploding, this is another good aspect. I believe we're going to dominate. No one's going to trust anything more than they trust the bank coins. So now that you have that information, what are you going to do with it? H-bar will go far. Just my humble opinion, not financial advice. So now that you have the information, what are you going to do with it? I know what I'm going to do with it. So until next time, let's get to the Monday.